eating food is not only a necessity in life, it is a pleasure that brings people together. You know, people center so much of their activities around food. But for some people, food is a very, very dangerous vice. In fact, some experts think that food addiction might be one of the prime causes of America's obesity epidemic. And here to teach us how to overcome this addiction with real advice on how to do it is Dr. Pam Peeke.
Thanks so much, Paige. No, you're not going out of your mind. If you think you're hooked on certain foods and beverages, well, science shows you are. Food addiction is actually real, and boy, have I got some great stuff to share with you today.
Looking forward to it.
It's wonderful. I'm very excited to meet her because this is actually something that I've battled. And, you know, a lot of people really make light of it, you know, if you just love food. And I know I even joke about it because it's a very shameful thing. You know, like whenever we're getting ready to do like any kind of trip, like say Patrick and I are planning on, I don't know, taking a road trip, or he says, I'm going to surprise you with something, and he'll plan like a day where we go to the museum or something. But whenever he says, you know, we're going to do something that day, save that day, we joke that I always say, will there be snacks? But, you know, I laugh about it, I make light about it, but it's actually something that really preoccupies my mind. It's very serious.
Well, it was really, it was heartwarming last night as we sat in our production meeting talking about this, and you really opened up and shared with the staff about how close this story is to your heart. So I think it's going to be really eye-opening to a lot of people, not only about, you know, the food addiction, but and your journey as well. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. Also,
sweet, salty, fatty, and addictive. Some doctors claim that you can become addicted to food. Author of The Hunger Fix, Dr. Pam Peeke is here to talk to us about the difference between a food lover and a food addict.
Okay,
So what is the difference?
Okay, the difference is I'm going to pick this up, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with having a donut. So I'm going to have a donut, and I'm someone who's just a food lover. I finish it up, I put it down, I may not even finish it, maybe eat half of it, walk away, get along with life, right? I feel fine, not a problem. A food addict would pick this up, and immediately they're cued in, and they eat it so fast they don't even remember it happened. Immediately they want more and more and more. They're consumed with shame, blame, and guilt. Right? And they feel completely out of control. This could basically lead to a bender. They could just go off and binge for who knows how long. There's a huge difference here. That's because the first person doesn't have any of these organic changes that took place in the brain of the person who's truly food addicted.
But I'm not sure I entirely understand. For those people out there who don't experience it, I think everybody can relate to opening a bag of potato chips. And it's like, you can't just eat one kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
So I feel like many people can relate to having a donut and be like, I think I need a second.
Or a third, or a fourth.
Sure, and I think people lots of people go through that sometimes, or have a situation. But how do you explain when people are so obsessed with food, it takes over your life?
Right. There's absolutely no question. What we found in science, and this is the National Institutes of Health, and this is really the most credible, highly funded research. What we found was that in certain people, these kinds of foods, which we call the hyperpalatables, they're uber, super sugary, fatty, salty food combos. When you eat them and when you're exposed to them 24/7, you know what it's like out there. 24/7, I can get this stuff anywhere I want to. It's cheap. I can always score it, right?
Right.
All right. In certain people,
not illegal.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's everywhere.
It's
especially
everywhere.
in this country.
You got it. And the cues are everywhere to eat it too, right? So if I'm overexposing my brain, my reward center in my brain to this, in certain people it hijacks the reward center. And what it does is it causes organic brain changes that literally set you up for addictive failure. You'll suddenly, just one donut will not satisfy. There's no period at the end of the sentence. You start heading for 20 more, and that doesn't satisfy. Now, I'm going to show you what this looks like in the brain. If you take it, here's a normal person. I think there's 2 left in the United States.
Is this an actual scan, or is this a...
No, seriously. This is a brain scan, all right? This is called a PET scan, and it lights up the reward center in the brain.
The red is what?
Exactly.
Representative of
that
what?
That is dopamine. That is your pleasure brain chemical. So when you see your baby, dopamine, it comes flooding out. Now, the only way you could see this on the scan is because you can actually link up the dopamine with little receptors. This is a normal person. In a person who's an addict, whether they're cocaine, obese, this basically represents all drugs for all intent and purposes. This is a food addict over here. You notice they have almost no. They're indistinguishable.
Indistinguishable.
Absolutely. That's because they have so few receptors left because of the constant erosion from the addiction itself that you have almost none of this beautiful stuff flowing through, and they walk around constantly obsessed, waiting for that next hit.
But you know what I find interesting about this scan is that you have normal, and then drug addiction with cocaine, and then obese. And I think it's a misconception that people with food addiction are all obese.
We use this because this was just a simple, straightforward experiment utilizing obese. But you're absolutely right. I could have instead written up here food addicted, and it could have been anybody, because this comes in all shapes and sizes, both genders, any age from children to 80-year-olds. It doesn't matter. So you're absolutely correct.
That's amazing to see that, because what you're basically saying is that somebody who's addicted to cocaine has the same sort of brain makeup in this case
Absolutely.
As they do here.
I know with me, I don't even know where to begin. I exhibit a lot of the same behavior that drug addicts exhibit. So when I was at my worst, food was the only thing I wanted, and I'm shaking. I don't know how to. Can you help me?
Sure, absolutely.
So,
as we're learning a lot about Paige's individual path that she's been on.
I've always had an issue with food, but I haven't suffered the consequences of it or the repercussions of it because I've always been extremely active.
Which means you didn't gain weight until...
I didn't gain weight until I injured my knee. So in 2009, I injured my knee, and also that happened to be a very bad year for me, just personally, and a lot of other things.
Stress.
A lot of stress, a lot of emotional stress. And I couldn't exercise at all. So not only was I eating significantly more, but I couldn't work it off. So I gained 40 pounds, and it was very difficult. In New York, especially, I was telling them last night, I could pass a McDonald's and I would go in and get a burger and fries, and then I would finish that as I was walking, and then 6, 7, 8 blocks later, I'd see a food truck and I would eat that too. And I couldn't really walk any stretch of time without eating more. And then I would come home and say, oh my gosh, I'm starving, I haven't eaten all day, let's go get dinner. So I was...
Because you didn't want to tip off Patrick.
No, I never wanted to tell anyone. So it's very hard, and I don't know, even though I feel like even when I exercise now, a lot of times I do it so I can eat.
Well, there's
I'm
also
very
another reason.
Preoccupied by the food. Everything in my day is geared around when will I eat, what will I eat.
But this is absolutely classic of food addiction, and it's interesting. One of the other nice things that comes out of your physical activity is not just cooking some calories, but we found in science that regardless of addiction, if you do physical activity on a routine basis, you actually reduce the incidence of relapse. So you're actually helping yourself in a big way. Right
I do
now,
end up eating less on the days I exercise harder.
Well, the other thing too is that if you look where you are right now today, flash forward, you look absolutely fantastic. You've figured out a little magic formula for being able to keep yourself where you are. But I'll put money on it right now that you take every day, 24 hours at a time.
Yeah.
And that is the classic way that anyone stays in any kind of recovery, regardless of addiction. And so, you know, I think it's wonderful that you share this with everyone, because people would look at you and say, you don't have any problems. What's up with that?
Yeah, and people think I can just eat whatever I want. Unfortunately, I do.
But look at your journey. But look at your journey.
But I also know, too, how dedicated she is to walking this path, because I hear stories about how she will have an amazing day of work and she'll be up at 4:30 working out with her trainer to make sure she stays on. So
that's my girl.
Love her. We are going to come right back. We have much more to talk about with you.
We're going to get some real tips and practical information on how to get past it.
Hopefully help anybody out there who is dealing with the same thing. All right.
Thank you.
Go.
We are back with Dr. Pam Peeke. You know, we've been talking about this sort of scientific connection to food addiction being very similar and, in fact, exactly the same as drug addiction or alcoholism. And you have very practical information on how we can deal with it and get past it.
Well, first, before we do any of that, when I wrote the Hunger Fix, I made up a little word. It's called the epiphany. In other words, a little awakening, eye-opening moment. What happened in your life? You know, when you shared this beautiful story, and it was so authentic.
Well, you know, I was very out of control, and I know you were talking about cues.
Right.
You know, I definitely have. I told you one story about going into therapy for my knee. You know, thinking I'm going to be better, I'm going to be better, I'm going to be better. And one day, truly hungry, I was actually hungry this day, I pulled into a Wendy's and I got one of those fried chicken sandwiches. And then I was quite simply incapable of passing that Wendy's every time I went to therapy, which was 4 times a week, to, you know, to not get that sandwich. So that step started going on, and I would tell people, you know, oh, my knee's been injured for a month, and then it was 2 months, and then 6 months it was surgery, and then the months went down, and then one day I told somebody that my knee had been injured for a year. And there was something about saying that a year that all of a sudden my mind raced to, well, is this going to be 5 years? Is this going to be 10 years? And it suddenly seemed like such a grand amount of time that this like whole penny dropped in me. And of course, for the whole year, I'd been desperate to get help, trying to do it on my own, thinking I could, you know, stop eating donuts and salami and 2 bottles of wine and wheels of cheddar cheese. Impossible. So I got help. I mean, lucky for me, I was able to actually hire a trainer. I was able to get a nutritionist who I, you know, spoke to and read a lot. But even after that, you know, it's not even so much about the trainer and the nutritionist as it is about getting a support system.
Right.
I got very honest about the problem I was having. I started telling people about it. Very few people know. Now everybody knows.
And you know something, we thank you for that.
But, you know, getting the support was really, I mean, it was paramount. It was everything. So, yes, the therapy, you know, how did it begin in the first place? Why do I go to that food? But then getting practical information, you know, finding out when I started counting my calories, and my trainer is telling me, you know, you should be eating 1,300 calories a day, and realizing that on a good day, on a day where I went to bed proud of myself, I'd had 10, 12, 15,000 calories. So
it's huge.
It's very eye-opening.
It's absolutely eye-opening.
So for me, the penny, that shift happened with the year, and just something just went bam. And I knew I had to do something. But it's very, very hard. You know, this practical information that you're going to give us, it's not an easy fix. You're armed with knowledge, and finding out about the scientific information, like you said at the top of the show, I wasn't crazy. The addiction that was there, it wasn't just because I was weak. And it was something very real
this is
that I
what
needed
people
to
say all the
change.
time, and this gets into the practical end of it. One of the first things that happens is when people walk up to you and say, "Oh, come on, it's just a donut."
Yeah.
You know, what's wrong with you? You know, show some willpower. Well, in those brain scans, what we also found was not just the reward center that was damaged, but also the part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, right up here, the smarty pants part of the brain, that helps you rein in impulsivity. That was damaged too. do. So how do you begin to turn a lot of this around? One of the first things that you did that was so terribly important was you got help. You put together your own support system. You know what I call changing up your tribe. You need to get your own little tribe. And those are all the people who are going to absolutely be there for you. Pets included. I don't, you know, everything's cool. That includes husbands and wives and whatever. Absolutely. And then what you end up doing is you look at it holistically. Mind, mouth, and muscle. In the mind, one of the first things you find is, look how emotional you are about this. This cuts way down and deep.
Well, it's very
big time.
It's not embarrassing.
No, that's
very
because
brave, actually.
Embarrassing means that other people are judging you. If they are, you know, they're useless. That's not what this is about. Your authenticity with this, your being real about this, is helping a boatload of people out there. They need to know they're not alone. When I published this book, which became a New York Times bestseller in 5 days after I actually launched it on television, what ended up happening was I got letters and emails and postings from people all around the country saying the same thing. I thought I was going out of my mind. I felt alone, ashamed, blaming myself, guilt. Where's my willpower when I need it? And instead, what did we have? We finally realized, no, this is actual real science now. Food addiction is real. It's no different than any other addiction. And it's about time people took it seriously. And this is what you're doing now every day. This is a fantastic example of what this is all about. So when you look at mind, mouth, and muscle, whoa, we've got some really cool new science things. One of the first things that helps more than anything else to get the smarty pants part, you know, healed up, and the reward center, which has been hijacked by the uber sugary, starchy, fatty, salty foods, is to do something interesting. It's meditate. When you meditate, you actually, and this is a lot of the more structured meditations, which also includes prayer, you actually increase the size of the brain, you stimulate neurogenesis, you're able to get a much stronger mind up here so that you can walk past this kind of stuff and say, nah, it doesn't work for me anymore.
And you also have very practical ways that we can detox.
Exactly.
Specific foods that are going to help us change how we eat.
And physical activity is terribly important here.
I got that down. Finally.
But everyone needs to have that, and everyone needs to know that that's a big piece of the tools.
Well, when we come back, you're going to give us many, many practical tips. We're going to go in the kitchen.
Yes, the kitchen.
We're going to go to the kitchen. No!
The kitchen.
No donuts, though.
No donuts. No donuts. Dr. Pam Peeke is taking us through her 3-step detox plan to end your food addiction for life. These are really incredible tips, and I've lived them. They're great. So,
well, we start with detox. Okay, do any of these look familiar?
All too familiar.
I know. It's the sugary, fatty, salty combos once again.
Well, actually, trade that out for cheese and potatoes, and if I wasn't a sweets person, but...
Well, no, we've got fat in there, too.
Fat, yes.
Okay, there's plenty of that, and also in this, too, this little bad boy that we've seen in coffee places.
The mochaccino, whatever, thing about it, Carmelati,
all I know is it took about a mortgage payment to pay for the thing. It ran out with a scone, too. You know, one of the first things I want to say is that there are cues for this everywhere. You know, this is why food addiction is so different than, say, you know, cocaine addiction. With cocaine, you can just sort of, you know, blast out of town, don't buy this stuff anymore, don't hang out with a bunch of losers, and then just start your life over again. What do you do with food?
Well, and you have to eat.
Well, you got to eat. And the cues to eat the hyperpalatables are everywhere. They're, you know, in billboards, and they're in radio and television. They're everywhere, okay? And so that's why you've got to have a really strong brain to be able to get yourself through this and focus. And this is why the foods I'm going to show you over here are going to give you that powerful brain. This, you know, if you have a little bit of ice cream, that's perfectly fine if you're not food addicted, but this may be your you know, tough stuff here. And that's why you have to tell your true truth and know. Now, many people are drinking, say, for instance, 6, 10, you know, sodas, sugary sodas a day. You can't really say, you know, you're off that overnight because you've got caffeine in there, you've got boatloads of sugar in there. So there are other ways to be able to wean yourself off.
You suggest weaning off.
Absolutely.
Don't go cold
Yeah, that could get really ugly really fast. You can lose half your family on that one, you know, when you're walking around withdrawing from that. So, you know, like a diet soda would be the next step down. Seltzer water is perfectly fine. And then finally, how about just plain water or tea for that matter, you know, with some little floating lemon or cucumbers or something fresh and whole. Keep thinking whole. If it's made in a plant, run. If it's made by a plant, you love it. Okay?
So this is the second.
So now we go to the plant place. Yes, and this is all good. So there's nothing in the world that cuts carb cravings better. Here comes a secret and a little tip here, than combining protein with fiber. You got it, absolutely. So there's a whole bunch of cool ways to do it. I like taking bananas and putting a little peanut butter on it. That's fantastic, or any nut butter for that matter. You can
My
do
trainer loves cottage cheese with strawberries.
Absolutely.
Or blueberries, because they got the fiber and the protein.
Absolutely.
And what that does is it enables your body to make different connections. It fills you in a different way. It releases different things in your brain, right?
Well, actually, it does that, but one of the neatest tricks it does is when you have fiber and a bunch of protein, what it does is it takes your stomach forever to break it down. So you get this sense of satisfaction. If I simply gave you a teaspoon of peanut butter, you go, whoa, and about an hour and a half later, then you'd be hungry. How could that be with just a teaspoon? Because it's got all that wonderful protein in it, as well as some wonderful fat, healthy fat. So this is all good, and this is all good for your brain too. Let's come on down here for a minute. Do-si-do here with Mark. Okay, now you're looking at lean protein, obviously. This is chicken again. Nuts are fabulous. Dairy, especially eggs. All of these kinds of foods here are wonderful for nourishing the smarty pants part of the brain, and at the same time also dampening down genes. Now, I'm not talking about Calvin Klein here either. I'm talking about genes in your body that may push you toward everything from addiction to obesity. Yeah, it's called the food-gene connection. Who knew? The leafy greens are famous for this. You know, the kale and obviously any of the dark leafy green vegetables. And these are fabulous because they go directly, they're all rich with vitamin B. They go directly to the genes in your body, and they actually dampen down any kinds of genes that put you at increased risk for heart disease, addiction, diabetes. Who knew?
But how do you help someone who wants to eat all of these, the whole bag of nuts?
Okay, it's called portion control. The first thing you have to say is, if I can't have one serving without wanting a mountain of the stuff, it's out, because it doesn't work for you. If you can, however, experiment and just get one of those little 2-ounce snack bags and put in, say, 10 of them, and then eat them, and if you're okay with that, then guess what? It's you and those snack bags. So it works. The other thing, too, is I want you to have a natural high. These are the false highs over here.
False fixes.
You got it. These are false fixes.
What does that mean?
What that means is you get this unnatural high. You basically go into food coma after having a bowl of that stuff.
I've knocked one of those off before.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I've polished that.
Well, actually, there's a menage a trois going on around America at nighttime. It's you, Ben, and Jerry. All three of you guys in bed, big tablespoon, there it is.
Guys. They're nice fellas.
Absolutely. So there's the food coma, and we don't need that. These are the healthy fixes. The most important thing to realize here is that you can get a natural high. All of these foods were specifically chosen, the flaxseed, all the rest of this was specifically chosen because it gives you a natural high, increased amount of dopamine naturally. That is a false fix.
Okay.
These are healthy fixes.
And I cannot stress enough how important it is to get support.
Oh my gosh.
Whether it's a website or a therapist or a trainer or a friend.
Absolutely.
You know, or a support group.
Absolutely.
Getting support is I think it's the biggest help of all, honestly.
Yeah. No question about it.
Well, when we come back, we can drown our sorrows with a zombie punch made by our classy ladies.
Nice.
Thank you, doctor.